Right. Good morning, Talofalawa, and welcome to the first webinar in Samoa as part of the global Stockholm 50 consultation. My name is Pragya Mishra. I am the head of experimentation at UNDP Accelerator Lab at Samoa Multicultural Office, and I am moderator for today's webinar. This is one of the first webinar in a 7-part series and will capture the business and private sector's perspectives about progress on sustainable development. I would kickstart this session by inviting Ozzy Semanu, Assistant Resident Representative for Environment and Climate Change Unit at UNDP, for a presentation on Stockholm+50 and Spark Blue. Ozzy, please join us and share more about Stockholm+50.
Thank you, Pragya. Thank you, moderator. Distinguished guests, former chief executive officers, head of private sector organizations and businesses and companies, members of the private sector, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure on behalf of the UNDP resident representative to welcome you all to the first webinar session for the Stockholm+50 National Consultations. Talofalawa and welcome. The Stockholm+50 will commemorate the 50 years since the convening of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and celebrate 50 years of global environment action by recognizing the importance of multilateralism in tackling the Earth's triple planetary crisis: climate, nature, and pollution. The national consultations will be an occasion to raise awareness about the importance of protecting our planet. It is an opportunity for members of the community, businesses, organizations, development partners, and government to dialogue on issues relevant to overcome these triple planetary crises: climate change, of nature and biodiversity loss, and of pollution and waste. The outcomes of these national dialogues will contribute to the international meeting to be held in June this year at Stockholm, Sweden, entitled Stockholm+50, a healthy planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility, our opportunity, which will be held during the week of World Environment Day. The Stockholm+50 also aims to help accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals during the decade of action, including through sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. We trust the consultation will spark interesting dialogues and see how we can best address critical environment issues in Samoa, and hopefully to inspire a younger generation to take these resolutions further and to a better future. With that, I would like to thank our panelists for this morning, Ato Ofionga, for taking time away from your busy schedule to partake in this dialogue. We thank you for your commitment to seeking solutions and better ways to address what was lacking in the past 50 years since the first UN conference on the environment, particularly in your sector. I wish the best for the dialogue today, and I encourage everyone who is joining online to partake in this consultation, whether it's during the dialogue or through the State of the Planet Global Survey. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Ozzy. So we have a stellar speaker lined up for today's webinar, and we have some thought-provoking questions to guide our today's conversation. But before we start the discussion, I would like to share some housekeeping rules. First, all the questions from participants would be answered during the Q&A session towards the last part of the webinar. All participants are requested to type in their questions in the Q&A chat box. If you have questions for a specific speaker, please mention their names along with the question. We will take all the questions together at the end. At around 11:15 a.m., we will share a global survey for participants to get their views on the state of planet. So this is a two-way dialogue that we'll have, and we also welcome your comments and perspectives. Thank you. Moving forward, I would love to introduce our esteemed speakers. But before I introduce them, please pardon me if some of my Indian accent creeps in while pronouncing their names. With that, let me start introducing the speakers. Our first speaker is Tupai Samoa Ba'ai, introducing from the big island of Savai, Tupai Samoa Bai. He is the chairman of the Samoa Hotel Association and the vice president of the Savai Samoa Tourism Association. He is also an executive member of Samoa Tourism Board, Samoa Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and Samoa Cocoa Industry Association. He is the president of the Asau Cocoa Growers Association, and as a successful businessman, he is the managing director of the Savai Cocoa and Wa'ai Moana Seaside Lounge. Our second speaker for today is Limonga Hobart Pati Wa'ai. He is the CEO of Samoa Chamber of Commerce and Industries since 2016. He is a chartered accountant by profession and with over 20 plus years of work experience in finance and project management. He has also served as the president for various national sports bodies and is a director on government boards. He is very passionate about empowering youth and ICT development, as well as development of entrepreneurs. And finally, our third speaker is Sayuli Deepakhanna, CEO of Digicel in Samoa. He is a proven leader in the business with extensive international career. Sayuli has developed a deep understanding of the Pacific AIGA, people, culture, and business environment by having lived and served in various Pacific countries such as Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Samoa, Tonga, and Nauru. He previously has served as CEO for Digicel in Vanuatu, Nauru, and Tonga, and he is the current CEO of Digicel in Samoa since April 2021. Sayuli was awarded the Presidential Medal of Honor, Vanuatu's highest civilian honor at Vanuatu's 41st independence celebration in July 2021, for his extensive contribution to the industry. He was also bestowed the High Chief title of Sayuli by His Highness, the King of Samoa, Malitoa Maoli to Malietoa in February 2022. Thank you so much, our esteemed speakers, for joining us today. We are delighted to have you here. Before we move on to our conversation, just a quick heads up for you speakers on the flow of today's session. Since we're all joining remotely, I will try my best to ensure we can hear each other and compensate for the cues that we usually get during the in-person discussions. To do this, and in the interest of time, when I will ask a question, I will nominate one of you to respond. In case I have not nominated you and you would like to add to the discussion, please feel free to raise your hand using the prompt and I will loop you in. Now, without further ado, let's start with our discussion and bringing here the first leadership dialogue, which includes reflecting on the urgent need for actions to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity for all. To begin this conversation, my first question is to Tupai. And my question is, how can we restore and regenerate a positive relationship with nature? If you can list one good practice which, if scaled up, can create a healthy planet. Over to you, Tupai.
Thank you, Braga, and welcome all, Talafalava. It's great to see everybody on this webinar. Thank you, Braga, for the question. I guess from a tourism perspective, we know that it's very crucial part of what we sell is the natural environment. So protection of the environment is a very crucial part and factor in what we do. So from our perspective, we need better partnership. A lot of the ownership of from the small island nations like ourselves, which a lot of the land and the natural sites are owned by the communities or the landowners, traditional landowners. So good partnership with a lot of the initiatives that have been set aside from by the landowners to ensure that there is a big protection around those natural sites and of course our environment. Another part, especially with the kind of developments that we do, and we do from a tourism perspective, we are more affiliated out to the crucial areas around remote and rural areas. So that development is crucial, that we look at ensuring that the impacts that we have on our environment is minimal, and ensure that there's a lot of green initiative that comes forward, especially around the waste management, reduction, of course, and disposal. As we all know, with a small island like ours, there's not much in terms of land mass that we can just dispose of cleanly any impacts that we have from our industries into the environment, and without it affecting the environment around, and especially our oceans as well in that part of I guess those are the main key factor areas that we look at, especially around the key partnership with the landowners, and to ensure that the product that we do sell complements the natural sites that most of the islands do present. If that sort of covers your question, Braga.
Yes, it does. And what you said makes so much sense, because unless we have community participation and have community partners in the development, we would not be able to get the green development that we want to. Thank you for that. Limonga and Sayuli, from your own industry perspectives, would you like to share one good practice each, which scaled up can contribute towards a healthy planet? Maybe any of you can start first, whoever's ready.
I think, thank you and good day. I think Pragya and the UNDP team, for organizing this. It's great to be on the panel and finally getting the, after all the technology blips out, getting everything out. I think from our side, taking into account what Stockholm 50 is, and around having the healthy planet and the prosperity of all, being the theme around this. From a Digicel perspective, what we've been doing as leaders in the industry is, planning and deploying more greener energy. And that is ensuring that our grid sites primarily to cut off the carbon emissions. I think those are one of the key practices, I would say, which we've kind of inducted into the to ensure our part in getting a greener energy into the whole perspective. I think that's just a start, and I think so as we progress through the discussions, we can bring out more best practices of what we've been doing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. From the perspective of the chamber, because we have a quite a holistic approach when we see these issues coming through our membership, and being in the front line of our private sector, I guess the biggest challenge is that knowledge gap. Those support and awareness systems that are given out to our business community. As Sayuli correctly mentioned, a lot of our larger corporate sized businesses, the capacity is there because they already have the systems in place. But when you start narrowing down to the small business, which is probably 95% of our business community, that knowledge gap is quite missing. So, providing more awareness and capacity building to that part of our business community, moving forward is a very important part of us trying to achieve, the KPIs or the programs that are being implemented through Stockholm. That is the true challenge that we need to address, providing awareness and capacity build for our small business community. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing what your respective organizations are already doing towards making this a healthy planet. If I may probe a little bit more, and if you can tell me some actions that businesses in general, and not limited to your organization, businesses in general, what actions they can take for a healthy planet, and for that to happen, what policies or systems do we need in place? If any one of you would like to take that question up.
Madam Moderator, I think that's an excellent question. Our government has done an excellent job over the last 5 to 7 years of implementing legislation, implementing systems, but there's always a challenge in compliance and also awareness given to the private sector. We can talk about many multiple initiatives that are being implemented by our government agencies. But enforcement is probably the biggest gap there is. And also, like I said before, that knowledge gap to the smaller businesses, making them aware that you have to comply to these certain measures. So like I said, there's a lot of opportunities there where we can bridge that gap. And that gap still exists, especially when you get to our smaller businesses. There's that knowledge gap there that needs to be addressed. But there's various initiatives. There's some excellent initiatives taking place in the agriculture sector. But then we come to other sectors in our private sector community. We're discussing a lot of initiatives now with our Ministry of Natural Resources and Environments. So there's a lot. That's quite a very broad question, but there's still and these issues are being addressed right now. Thank you.
Sure, and I see here Tupai also raised his hand. So if you'd like to share your thoughts.
Thank you, moderator. I think from our industry perspective, a lot of it's the newer access to new technology, especially around the renewable resources and energy. It's something that's been that the industry has been worked hard for to try and access. Legislation is just now coming in, and hopefully the new policies. But as always with any kind of new technology, it always comes with costs. So a better access in terms of the knowledge. Now that we've sort of slowly introducing the legislation to sort of free up the access into renewable resources and be able to self-generate. Solar energy, of course, is the main one that the industry is always looking at. Coming from 99 hours who has a lot of sunshine, there's that access into that and the policies to make it cheaper to access it. So the two main policies in looking at it is around access to that cheaper technology, enabling that renewable resources energy, and then of course our waste disposal is always something that's very challenging for small island nations, and especially for industries like ours, which are based right out in the rural communities. We need to have a look at that kind of technology and ensure that we have easy access or policies and regulations that brings it in easily to ensure that we do look after our environment with those access to that kind of facilities. Thank
you. That was really thought-provoking to say that we need access to cheaper technology that's more efficient on fuel. We need access to renewable energy at a subsidized rate. We also need to look at waste management, which you rightly pointed out, is a big challenge for a small island like ours. So to bring that all together, and you have already answered briefly my next question, just to kind of drill it down further, to all this change to happen, if this progress is already happening, what are the indicators we can look at to track our progress? Again, and this is all that's going to inform us and inform the government to set up these indicators in place so that we know we are moving forward and we are doing progress. So once more, to see the progress towards a healthy planet, what kind of indicators we can look at to track our progress?
I think on this, if I may add to what already my co-speakers had spoken about, I think if you look at both pivoting manufacturing, or even looking at specifically to our small island nation, looking at the reduced temperature, what is happening, or the greenhouse effect right now, or the fossil fuel and how the oceans are at this point of time living up, because we've seen work through, say, in Kiribati and the islands around over there, how the islands are sinking because, again, due to greenhouse emissions. And these are the ones where we can actually monitor these specific indicators And if there are now, the legislation which is already there, that can definitely help us, move and progress this forward. We are providing platforms, in terms of information sharing to the environment and the natural disasters, simply things like, for warnings, disaster and warnings. So there are platforms which are already there, technology which is already there. So it's no longer a small island trying to catch up on a technology perspective. Both platforms and technology being there, world class at any standard, beat any first level country. But I would say, the developed country versus a developing country. I think so from a technology perspective, the gap is just not there. Today, I would say we are far, far better than quite a few developed countries in having the right technology and the platform. It's basically now with this whole legislation, what the government has implemented, as alluded to earlier by the CEO Chambers as well as the chair, SHA. It's just about monitoring these.
Thank you, Sioli. So we have set a good tone for the webinar, and we've already started talking about the meta level things that need to happen, both from the side of the businesses and also the support that businesses need in order to create a healthy planet. And with this, let's move to our next leadership dialogue session, which is focused around the most pertinent issue of our time, which is COVID-19. And as you may all agree, that COVID-19 has erased a lot of progress made on the SDGs in last couple of years. But then it also gave us a sort of reset button. For this dialogue, we would discuss about actions that could be taken for achieving a sustainable and inclusive recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. And for this dialogue, my first question is for Limonga. The question is, which sectors are most critical for recovery? How can we create better performing businesses and supply chains for a just transition to a more sustainable economy?
Thank you very much, moderator, for the question. I will read directly from our business confidence survey that we've conducted over the past couple of months. This has been a survey that we have conducted through our business community from Upolu to Savai'i, with 554 respondents from MSMEs all the way to our corporate family business community. And the key sectors, if I can highlight it down to 4 that are private sector saying they need support in, the top 2 is tourism. Number 1 is tourism, the recovery of our tourism sector. Number 2 is ICT, ICT transformation, especially as we're moving out, we were facing during COVID, but moving out of COVID to further support our economy moving forward. The other one is the agriculture sector. And we have the other one here, which is the top 4, was supporting our small business community. So, there's quite a few asks, but these came out permanently as the top 4 that needed to be supported during this time. And we also posed through various surveys out to our members, where can we bridge the gap when it comes to issues that we face in terms of climate change. And I think Sayuli mentioned it in his last intervention to our forum. The private sector needs to be part of the solution when we're addressing these issues of climate change, better looking after our environment and our land resources. So often the feedback we get from our private sector community is we're often brought to the table to be told, you're just there to comply with a piece of law. We're normally brought to the table when it's time to, we're going to tax you now, so you better be compliant. But let's be part of the conversation. Let's be the solutions. Shirley mentioned some great initiatives, utilizing our ICT, and also Tupa'i as well mentioned supporting our tourism sector. And that goes back to my main point in the last one, you know, that bridging that gap between private sector and all our other initiatives. You know, we see a lot of these exchanges and these workshops international. It's normally dominated by officials, government officials and other agencies, COP agencies, but the front line to everything is the private sector. So they need to be part. That's why we support this initiative, that we're able to have a voice and highlight the different challenges that our business community. So, you know, COVID-19 has been, it's been absolutely devastating on our community. We're also now just come out of extended lockdown, and those impacts of lockdowns are still being felt by our business community. The 4 weeks that we're in level 3 to 2.8 has basically put us about 4 months behind the schedule of a lot of our work. And that's why we've been lobbying intensely for our government to have a pathway. So every business, from our small businesses, agriculture sector, all the way to our tourism sector, has the opportunity to earn an income. But upskilling our private sector is very important, and we commend the efforts by our donor communities that we see projects are coming through now. You know, these projects are stimuluses as well to our business community. You know, it's one much needed support that we need during this time. I'll be brief there. I'll give it to my colleagues who will have some more interventions. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very informative. So the addition to this question is also that how do we create more sustainable supply chains and industries when we are looking at recovery, so that we don't make the same mistake of depending on systems that are fragile. So maybe if Tupai, would you like to share something on this? How do we create supply chains and businesses that can give us a just and more sustainable economy?
Thank you, moderator. I think with I will just lend support to what just before we sort of move on towards the question, what Lemangwa has just alluded to, especially around, I think you're seeing the last question from our first moderation that we talk about the indicators, and for a lot of these discussions is usually based around government policies, but a real true indicator would be how involved the private sectors would be. And because at the end of the day, even for the policies are being made, the implicate or the application of those policies and comes down to the private sector. So needs to be a real big involvement around that, and to see that the private sector are actually thriving in those particular environments, whereby it's mostly or traditionally always has been a government led initiatives, would be a good indicator that everybody's hands on, or at least involved in trying to make our planet a better and our environment a safer one. In terms of especially around the COVID-19, it's where we do not need to expand in more on what the impact is on the tourism sector, especially around the COVID-19 pandemic globally, not just Samoa, but for a small island nation like Samoa, who's lacking in resources, tourism is a key stakeholder in terms of its backbone, and trying to reestablish some of those supply chains and ensuring that some of the practices that were slowly being introduced and the mindset that was coming forward in terms of our particular industry around green initiatives and environmentally focused initiatives. There needs to be more, I guess, assistance towards that in helping out to try and restart it, because as we've said, the pandemic or the COVID-19 has had a huge impact, and it's probably put those back, going back 10 to 15 years. A lot of them are not looking at, because a lot of the initiatives that we do take in sufficient around environment is costly, and it needs a bit of an investment. So there is a real need to try and relook at how we can assist that and help it push along, not just about the policies, but ensuring that the work gets done and the assistance is funneled into the right channels to ensure that it does happen until we start rebuilding that. I think those are just probably a quick sort of mind that we can sort of bring to the table, especially around rebuilding these supply chains, because it is crucial and really essential that we do have them. But from especially around the tourism focus sector, it is very hard at this point in time, especially when you're trying, we've got so many other things to prioritize. So it is crucial that we do look at how we can sort of provide that assistance and into not only just tourism, but all the other businesses, especially in trying to revive their green initiatives. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. That was a very interesting point of saying how can policies be more bottom up and really listen to the voices of those people who are at the front line, and especially businesses, because they are very integral part of society. So thank you so much for sharing that. Moving to our next question, and this is connected to the other two questions where we are talking about shifting into more sustainable business practices, creating new supply chains, and therefore it becomes very important to see that what kind of decent green jobs are needed for the future. And for these green jobs, what are the new skill sets that are required? And if I can ask this question to Sayuli, if you'd like to share about green jobs and new skill sets.
Thank you, moderator. I think what we've seen, during over the last 6-7 weeks is a lot of use of technology. While we knew, COVID was coming in and the preparations were going on over the last 2 years, in terms of, increasing the data capacity. And, we've seen across different, the private sector, the government sector, the NGOs, all of them, the capacity to use the network, it's gone up tremendously. In terms of the green jobs today, I mean, the work never stopped. If you looked at it, and I'm sure, my fellow speakers, both Lumanga and Tupai, would allude to that, the work never stopped over the last 6-7 weeks. The work went across, in different industries. So today, the ICT services definitely, we've seen that that is something which will help progress. So as we move and we kind of move towards over the next couple of months in terms of opening up the country, it'll help help on connectivity and digital access to the services, will kind of reduce our, while we love the face-to-face interaction, but also there is work which can be done remotely too. And this also opens up access to other jobs which are not there in the country earlier, right? So things like, starting up call centers, which are servicing the fellow Pacific communities in New Zealand and in Australia, where there's a big substantial population sitting over there. So they need not be there sitting in Australia and New Zealand. You can actually have that being done from Samoa itself. So that gives, another set of jobs to the youth of today, that, okay, sitting here, you can actually be servicing that. The other one which has come through is around the need for more ICT personnel into the country. And I thanks for that. I've been having a discussion with the vice chancellors of both the universities to kind of incorporate that into their into the system in terms of the educational system as we move. So today, instead of us looking at hiring more IT engineers or ICT engineers from outside, I think if we build and incorporate that into the system, that'll help us advance the technology as we move forward. As mentioned earlier by Lumang, with the survey being done, and we saw that, okay, agriculture sector came out big, tourism sector came out big. So in terms of, the food security, or in terms of how we can actually help that particular sector. So today, we've got advanced technologies today to help, which is related to irrigation, related to, to avoid the wastage of water shortages and move towards a more sustainable environment. So we can see that the technology, along with the right initiatives by be it a small sector or a large scale sector, we can actually work together to build a stronger, I would say, the greener job sector into the country.
Thank you, Sayuli. Lemonga or Tapai, if you have something to add on to what are the green jobs and future skills that we can think for, especially in the context of Samoa.
Thank you, moderator. I just want to acknowledge a very crucial partner in our work in our work in supporting green jobs initiative, especially our colleagues at UNDP through the Social Protection Program and also ILO, the CD Press Project through Youth Coco, the Zero Internship Program, Youth Collab, and Business Integrity. These are all important projects that we've been undertaking or undertake for at least the next 6 months. Next 3 months, and because each one of those opportunities that we're utilizing to employ youth into the private sector, we're inserting a component on climate readiness, climate change readiness, preparing our business community, and we're targeting what we see as the influencers, which is the youth and young women entrepreneurs, because a lot of the initiatives that we're conducting, we really see them as the changes. Different mindsets, willing to go out and change the norm, challenge the norm. So I really want to shout out to our development partners who have been supporting us. And these are very crucial to our coming out of COVID-19 because we'll be putting these interns and they will support our business community as part of the recovery. But I also fully support all the comments made by Sayuli. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I think Lemanga has pretty much covered all that's needed in terms of around the green jobs. I think if there's any one inclusion I can bring forward is, of course, especially around the rural communities, a lot of new initiatives around environment and maintaining the natural sites. There is a big capacity around that, changing that mindset and for the youth to ensure that they look after their environment, because it is a huge attraction for a lot of people, especially traveling from a tourism perspective and coming to Samoa, that we educate and build the capacity of our rural communities to ensure that they do take real ownership, not just ownership by paper in terms of, that's a traditional given, but to have that capacity to sort of build a bond to ensure that it turns into a product from a tourism perspective. I think that would be all they can add, and I support what Lemanga and Sayuli have already put forward.
Thank you very much. So we are almost towards the close of our first 2 leadership dialogue questions. If you have any other comments from the questions that you have listened so far, and something that is clicked later, and if you would like to share, both on big trends that we can have for a healthy planet and around COVID recovery. All right. So I assume whatever clicked to your mind, you already shared that. So thank you very much for this engaging and insightful discussion so far. We will take a short 10 minutes break here. And this is for, we just take a 10 minutes break. And in this time, we will share a global survey. It's called the State of Planet. It's a global public survey that we will share out to all the participants. It's the answers that we will receive from the survey. They're all anonymous. It takes only 5 minutes to complete the survey, and the results would be taken to the Stockholm 50 International Meeting, which would be held in Stockholm, Sweden on 2nd and 3rd of June. So with this, just take a quick 10 minutes break, have water, buy your breaks, and then we'll start at 11 a.m. again. See you shortly. Thank you, participants, for taking the Global Public Survey. Welcome back to the discussion. Before we move forward, we would like to acknowledge and thank Maria Enosa from Nuanua Ole Alofa for helping us with the sign language translation, making this webinar more inclusive and accessible. Fafatai Telilava, Maria Enosa, thank you so much. And now, during a break, we also noticed that there are some, thank you so much. We also noticed that there are some participants who had questions about the first two leadership dialogues. Some of these questions have already been answered. But our speakers, if you have any additional comments that you would like to make or further that you would like to answer to the participants, we can open the floor now. So there are some questions. There's one question for Sayuli, where Franceses Ruipena has asked, thank you, Sayuli, for your views. Indeed, it is very important to have access to technological platforms in the view of a green COVID-19 recovery pathway. Do you see affordability as an issue?
Thank you, Pragya. In terms of affordability, I think just for everyone who is actually watching this live, as well as how this will get transmitted across. We in Samoa have, I would say, one of the most affordable networks, and also the access to the products and services in the whole region, right? I'm currently sitting in Brisbane and I know what I spend for my son or my the family in terms of the amount. What are products and services what we've been able to provide, especially taking into account that the usage would go up. So yes, over the last 7 years, when I arrived first into the country and to where we are today, we have been going, I would say, making it far more affordable, and also investing that much into the technology, right? Because technology is something, it needs constant update every year. So where we started off with, a couple of years ago with just having a satellite network to where we are today, having multiple cables and getting onto the Zoom calls like this, without, I would say, buffering and all, it speaks volumes to what the investment is going into the technology. So definitely, it is by far one of the most affordable in the Pacific. And I think that's what has made Samoa stand out in the Pacific as the topmost country in terms of having the best of network being provided.
Thank you, Sayuli. There's another question that is for Tupai. And the question says, I believe the seasonal worker scheme has taken most of the employees from the tourism sector. How is SHA taking actions now to train and recruit new employees to prepare for the reopening of the borders? And also, if I can add to this, when we recruit new employees, can these jobs become greener as we are on the path for recovery?
Thank you, moderator, and thank you also for the question from our participants. I think the RSE scheme has been widely inputted, especially around from the private sector. It is quite an impact on the RSE, and we have voiced and immensely contributed as well from the private sector, right across from the Maunga and the team and all the private sector organizations around the impacts of RSE. And hence the government has had a relook at RSE scheme around the preparation, especially for the tourism sector. It is has always been the key push that the tourism has pushed forward is a date on reopening. Now that we have that date, or at least an indication of when our borders are reopening, we are now starting to sort of put those in place. We have plans, contingency plans that we've put aside and have budgeted for from a tourism perspective. But now that we've got a definite date, those will now start to come to be rolled out and see how we can put forward. In terms of looking at green jobs, there is a big push, especially around cultural heritage and natural sites, from a refocus of tourism. So there will be a lot of green jobs available. As I've answered to Francis as well, especially around green job initiatives. The biggest issue, of course, is retention, and that needs a lot of work and a lot of investment into to ensure, like we said, that the true ownership is taken up, and it's the core of anybody taking up green initiatives or green jobs, especially around in the rural communities. Otherwise, you will always be looking for more lucrative offers and jobs outside of your normal communities, and where mostly of the green initiatives would be based upon. So in terms of preparation, we do have plans in the pipeline for tourism in terms of employment, and yes, there are a lot of green initiatives, green jobs, which we are looking at, especially going forward.
Thank you. It's very encouraging to know that there's lots going on in the background, and there's lots of green initiatives in the pipeline, and Samoa is in good hands. Okay, moving on to a third leadership dialogue question now. And this dialogue would be focused a lot on action, and we've already been talking about action, and I think that's one of the brilliant thing about private sector. Like, you talk in it, the first thing is action that you talk about. So at the UN, we call this decade as the decade of action, and we would like to accelerate the actions that achieve the environmental dimension of sustainable development. This is the theme for this dialogue. And for my first question, I would like to ask Sayuli. Question is, what good practices would you like to see being implemented for sustainable development in Samoa, especially keeping environment in mind?
Thank you, Pragya, moderator. In terms of best practices, I would say where we're looking at, to be implemented in specific to Samoa is, like I was alluding to earlier, the platform has been provided. It is how we kind of utilize the platform to make use of technology. So the platform today, in terms of, as simple as a vehicle tracker today, when a vehicle tracker is provided, we just take it, oh, someone just is monitoring the vehicle movement from one place to another. But if you look at it the otherwise, it's actually helping in carbon emission reduction, because you're helping in also the fuel reduction, the usage of fuel reduction, right? So that is one way where we can actually look at that. The other is, where we're looking at providing, how do we automate processes and power systems, simply to reduce the wastage of power into the country. So that's where the smart meters come into the picture, and how technology is playing an important role onto that. Getting the solar panels across, as Tupai was mentioning earlier, getting these solar panels along with where we have having grid sites. So that means an alternate to, again, using the renewable green energy. So this is something maybe a decade ago, or sorry, or even say a couple of years ago, someone would think that, okay, what is it that I'd like to do to be a part of it? How is it that I would like to build up a healthy planet? Today, there are, if you look at it, each one of us, both in terms of private sector as well as the government sector, can look at contributing in a big way, and progressing and moving forward on this.
Thank you, Sayuli, for sharing this. And you're right about this. We see more and more private sector leaders also talking about being part of the conversation and action towards a healthy planet. And businesses are pivoting in their own ways in which towards more sustainable practices. Is there anything, Limonga, you would like to add to the discussion around what Seoli said about some good practices that should be implemented in Samoa.
So, moderator, can I make an intervention on this issue?
Yes, please.
Yes. I think there's a lot of initiatives going on right now. What we need is those initiatives to be have a longevity in the way that they're implemented. Some of them are quite short in the way they're conducted. A lot of these pathways need to be extended for at least another 2 years, given the impact of COVID. Really support a lot of initiatives that our donors and governments is conducting, but just ensuring that the lifeline of these programs are, at minimum 3 years, and there are many across that are being implemented by our ministries, great initiatives. But it's a really an ask out to our different donors if those can be extended, because we really need them now in the time that we're trying to recover from COVID. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Tufai, would you like to share some of the good practices that, if implemented, can really bring a sustainable development in Samoa?
Sorry, Braga, can you repeat that again, please?
Sure. The question is, what good practices would you like to see being implemented for sustainable development in Samoa, especially keeping environment in mind?
I guess environment, it revolves around quite a cross sector, not just the tourism. Tourism, of course, is very crucial because it does use the natural beauty and the natural environment as one of its selling points for the country, and especially for its own industry. But for myself, I think I would just like to support again what CU has also put forward from my previous answer from our first dialogue, especially around access into that new technology, especially around renewable energy and resources. Is that access, or at least those pathways into accessing those new technologies, especially not only just for renewable energy, but also for waste management disposal, because those are the two main key areas which we look at from a business, or at least a core business outlook, and that can impact quite tremendously. The partnerships between the community itself affects into the natural sites and all that, but these are the two core areas which we look at. I think that I also saw on the question that been put forward by somebody on the chat, especially around the initiatives that the industries in themselves have been doing. One key area that the tourism has pushed hard for is around solar energy, which is something that is abundant in Samoa, is that renewable energy of sunlight. But the access into it and the legislation that was needed to ensure that we can self-produce has always been a sticking point. And it's something that when working, especially around the key government ministries which control these particular areas or sectors, need to open up and have a partnership with the private sector, because it is quite a key area, especially around the fossil fuel that's used to generate electricity in Samoa, and the businesses involved need a lot of that electricity. So it will be key area to try and look at a pathway that enables and incentives that can enable the businesses, not only just tourism, but others self-generate utilizing solar renewable energy. But again, I think my key focus would be around accessing to those technologies, and especially around management of waste disposal and renewable resources.
Madam Moderator, I just want to reply to the question by the Honourable Minister. Good morning, Honourable Minister. I'll just briefly answer the question in regards to, what are we doing? What examples that we're doing in the private sector? Again, I'll re-mention the project work that we're doing with UNDP and ILO through the Youth Cocoa Cedar Press, the Zero Internship, Youth Collab, and Business Integrity. We are implementing a component of climate change, advocating for green jobs, upskilling our youth and women entrepreneurs and our business leaders who are attending these trainings. And the key thing that we want to move forward, part of our business continuity planning, we actually do it in partnership with the team at MNRE, with the DMO team. It's just been a challenge for us at the moment because the team is running NEOC, but we're hoping that once things will relax, because what we like to do is do these trainings in partnership with governments, and especially those in our Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, because we've planned trainings in the past, and it's just that the challenging situation we're in. But for us to make the trainings more robust and the support to the private sector, we have to do it in partnership with our government. So thank you very much. Sorry, moderator, just want to answer the minister's question.
Moderator, as well, if I...
Yeah, please go ahead.
Please go ahead.
In terms of, I've just reread the question as well, and especially around the tourism, like we said, we've done a lot of work, especially around trying to access solar energy. If you do look at around a lot of the properties, we do find that a lot of the properties have moved their lights into a lot of solar street lights, which are very expensive in Samoa, I would say. But a lot of that movement towards that solar, we've been wanting to expand a lot higher and a lot further than just simple street lights. There's a lot of technology that's available out there, but of course, it is probably 5 times expensive as your conventional technology. So that does put a lot of hindrance on green initiatives when you're trying to move forward. I think as well with a lot of the associations, a lot of them have been working on waste management programs. Like I said, these are the 2 core which affect directly from the businesses. It's the reason why the tourism sector tends to focus on those 2 particular ones. Of course, because it is something that the decisions of each individual business can affect. And especially around waste disposal, I think there was a lot of programs around bottle recycling and bottle crushing to try and turn it back into reuse it for other sources like sand. So there are a few initiatives that's been attached on by some of the associations, some of the businesses, but to support it and sustain it has been a big challenge, and simply because of the costs involved in those initiatives. So it is something that's really that the industries and the private sector really need support on from governments, is to find pathways so we can access assistance that help us to maintain them. If I could just add on to that. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Just to add to what and the question, first of all, thank you, Honorable Minister, for joining the dialogue. In terms of how digital is done in terms of helping, is we've planned and deployed a lot of renewable energy for off-grid sites to cut the carbon emissions. So both solar as well as wind turbines, those have been added to our grid sites. So that kind of reduces the fuel consumption, what we have across on the sites. Then in terms of annually at Digicel, what we also do is we dispose of old phones, because people, if you look at it, the smartphones, again on that, there is battery disposal, the plastic separate. So we have specifically where we actually get customers to, we have these annual events, and I'm sure we'll be adding more to that rather than making it just annual where they look at, disposing of old phones. And that is something which is helping us. Then again, also helping on the connectivity through the digital access to the services, that has again helped us again further reduce the carbon emissions. Where we would like maybe the government support is on a couple of things. One is, as alluded by Tupai earlier, all these, when you invest in over and above in what you can actually run the technology, there is a cost to it. So if I can look at duties reduction, when the custom duties reduction coming in, as simple as even in terms of your handsets or your devices which come into the country today, people end up paying quite a bit. And the reason is because the duties can be, if that can be reduced, that means the digital access and connectivity is being given. And we made a submission. I think on that, we made a submission to our minister on that. If that can help reduce, it gives more access in terms of technology in the hands of our consumers, in people of Samoa. And also, if you also look at reduction on even importing solar panels and all that, that again would help us cut again carbon emissions and use more of the renewable energy into our everyday lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answers, and you've actually already preempted my next question and sort of answered that. So my next question was, what measures are needed to align private sector with the existing commitments and priorities set by government and people of Samoa? And I think that's one thing I really appreciate about private sectors. You're always preempting what's happening next. And you are sort of ready to move forward and take the first step, which is quite evident from this discussion right now. But if there's something else that you want to add to this question, and I would say this question again: what measures are needed to align private sector with the existing commitments and priorities set by the government and people of Samoa? Any one of you who would like to take this question?
Thank you, moderator. I think I'll start first. I guess it's for the Chamber's perspective, it's really also aligning with the priorities of our governments. We need to be strategic in the way that we bring our submissions to government. And the challenge for us is also to ensure that we feed quality data to our stakeholders. I mentioned before the importance of our business confidence surveys. We've invested heavily in the last 2 years in building our information systems. So when government, it's been also very important in this COVID-19 period, when government asks for information, that we're able to provide it. So, we've invested in a culture system. So when data is requested, we're able to give it. So the most important thing for us from the Chamber's perspective is our data is inclusive of everybody's views. Everything is consulted. Everything is consulted. When government wants information on how things are working, we send out the call to our members to bring in those issues. And it's those issues that are presented to our stakeholders, not one single person's view or 2 or 3 people. It's inclusive view. So they can see the impacts on any initiative that are given widely or any support coming from our government stakeholders. So for me, that question is more like a challenge to us, that we provide that data and that we align is also to the strategic pathway that's been developed for us by our governments. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator Greg. I think if I can just add on, as you already pointed out, a lot of this, majority of this question has been answered by some of our earlier comments. But if I can just again reiterate, the policies are all that the government and the initiative that they've developed are all there, and it's great to see that the governments are looking into these new ways. Now it needs to move on to the next implementation stage, and that's important. That's more crucial than having the policies and the initiatives sort of on paper, and that comes with the help, with the partnership with the private sector, and access on how we can make it, how we can move it. And as Sayuda has already pointed out, some of the ideas we can make it cheaper in terms of bringing that technology in cheaper, making and access incentives that can sort of help us drive and push it forward. And I think that's all that we can pretty much do now, is move it from a policy and paper sort of stage to implementation. And that needs a good partnership between government and, of course, the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's bang on, very aligned with the decade of action that we have done good work in policies, we have them on paper, and now let's get them on field, let's implement them. Thank you. And this brings us to the last and final question of this particular dialogue, and which is what capacities and technologies are needed from the private sector to improve human well-being in harmony with nature? And Sayuli, if you'd like to take this question, I'll repeat the question. What capacities and technologies are needed from the private sector to improve human well-being in harmony with nature?
Thank you, moderator. I think it's another fantastic question, and I've loved this dialogue all through in terms of how we are building a nice, healthy planet and working towards the prosperity of all. I think a couple of things as we are progressing and rebuilding the nation, getting through with COVID, in terms of both pivoting manufacturing, uh, building on our food security, and that is working together with the agriculture sector, hand in glove, with providing them like the Internet of Things, the monitors, sensors which are needed to monitor and implement, advanced technologies related to agriculture. Those are there, which can be today provided. Adaptability more towards, rebuilding on the tourism sector. That today, how you can have seamless check-in into the hotels when people are coming in. So you have, as simple as that, the apps as you come into the country. The first thing is you have the app to monitor whether someone's got COVID or not. You go to the hotels, you've got again seamless check-ins. So that is where you've got the like we said, the platforms are already there to provide and building that app, and that'll definitely help us in terms of building up the environment and in a more sustainable way forward.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I think from the Chamber's perspective, the key word for us is access. Something that we've been advocating for a very long time, and we're very fortunate now. Before we get to capacities and technologies, the most important thing is access. On a policy level, we're very fortunate now that after for many years of asking, we're getting duty concessions on our smartphones and laptops, and we're grateful for that, because before we can make use of the Wi-Fi and all the excellent internet, we needed those access devices to be accessible by not only in the business community but our rural, our children. So those are a very important part of our submissions over the years. So for us, access is a very important thing. So we're very grateful for those initiatives that's been taken by our government most recently.
Thank you for the views for our panelists, Malo. I think if I could just again add on to Sayuli, I think what he has said earlier before about technologies and Samoa being well placed. We're not far behind in terms of technology that's been available in Samoa. It's just as Naimang has put, we just need more and more access into it. But I think the technologies here, the capacity is something that's I think it's not so much the capacity, but the capacity to ensure that we use it well for its intention. Technology and information technology, especially around these days, are very crucial key elements that we can use to educate ourselves and expand a lot of our horizon. It just needs to ensure that there's a clear pathway and ensure how it's used well to achieve the goals that we needed to achieve, and especially around the well-being and in use in terms of educating more people about how precious our environment is and what we can do as individuals and as communities to ensure that we have the same alignment as everybody else around looking after our planet. Just a small add-on, moderator, and a type.
Thank you. This is really insightful, and it gives me a lot of hope to see so many positive actions that are being taken by different businesses, and you all spearheading that change within your respective organizations. And really hope to, right now, you are some of the outliers. You're doing things which nobody asked you to do, but you're doing it because you believe in it. And we hope that moving forward, we see some of these good environmental practices as becoming a norm. And we see more and more people coming in and being part of this action and this movement of making this planet healthy, green, and for all of us. So thank you very much. We are at the final end of the leadership dialogue question 3. And before we open up the floor for Q&A, I have one final question for all 3 of you. And let's start with Limunga. And the question is, what kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm+50? If I repeat this question one more time, as you know, we are celebrating the 50 years of the first conference that we convened in Stockholm, and this is the 50 years, and we have a global consultations that are happening. So if you have to say your personal preference, what kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm+50 dialogue?
Madam Moderator, I'll be quick. More joint initiatives between our private sector and governments in trying to achieve the outcomes from the Stockholm meeting. So more joint projects done in partnership with our government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I guess that's is a key sign that we should move along to the next one. And so I guess I'll take the lead in that. I fully support what Limunga has put forward, especially around those initiatives. And I know that a lot of the initiatives that do come out of our UNDP and our Stockholm, it's catered towards government. I would like to see a little bit more around the fostering that partnership and also access for the private sector to ensure that the initiatives go forward. Ooh, geez, I think that will be my only add-on, to see more assistance and granting facilities that we can access not only just through government, by government, but also the private sector to ensure that the initiatives do move. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Both Limunga and Tuba have really summed it up very well. It is for me personally would be with this good partnership what we've had now with along with Digital, along with UNDP, especially on the Stockholm 50. It is would be to get this government and the private partnership moving forward, and in a very meaningful dialogue what we've had today. And with this, the submission coming out, and if we can look at the actions coming out of these, would be clearly, as we said, more access to the technology. Having that access across would be a big benefit as we move forward. I think that would be one clear action, what we can say coming from our end.
Thank you. All right then. I would like to thank all of our esteemed speakers. Thank you for your contribution. And now it's the time for Q&A. So we do have some comments coming in, and also we open the floor for participants to ask questions to the speakers. So we have another question from the minister, and I will read it out for you. SCCI and SHHA, do we have any groups promoting and working on climate smart agriculture, organics, or other sustainable agriculture? And how much of these are being utilized or promoted by the other sectors, including hotels and shops? It will be interesting to have background on this, and as it is a big part of our cash and domestic economy.
Thank you, Moderator. Organics is, and thank you, Honorable, for the question. There are a few groups, especially around swag and some of the smaller organics. The organic movement is something that is new in Samoa, and it's very, I say, boutique in terms of market. Um, as as Samoa moves more and more to commercialization of farming, it has moved away a lot from the organics. But a lot of the subsistent farmers, especially around the community areas, rural areas, are very still traditionally organic as such. But there are a few organics, and there are a few hotels as well that do utilize. Prior to COVID, a lot of the rural hotels and the industry buy a lot of the fruits locally. So there we are a bit part of it, and that there is sadly no way of sort of recording it as such, to sort of really reflect the impact that the tourism sector has on the local produce, especially around the organics and all that. There's been a lot of headways made from locally produced products like jams and other products from the organic side story, and that has been widely promoted right across the sector. We try and use the story of Samoa and what it produces to push that, but as we all aware, the pandemic has put a complete halt to that particular part of the contribution of tourism to our local economy. And I wish there is a way as well that we can sort of really record that impact that the sector has, especially in terms of buying that domestic market.
Thank you, moderator. Yeah, Talofa again, Honourable Minister. Just to add on further to what Tupai mentioned, there are many players on the field, Honourable Minister, across the board. And I really want to talk about the challenge because, we're out on the field delivering trainings, rolling out 2 or 3 every month. And just specifically, for example, agriculture, we have such a fragmented community. So many, for such a small country, we have so many farmers organizations and farmers groups. We're still trying to navigate a way to cater for all of them. But there are definitely, Honorable Minister, I can mention a few, also a lot of organizations under umbrella that are working towards, climate resilience, good best practices. But the challenge is they're quite fragmented in what they do. So we're also trying to make them work more collectively as groups. But it's a challenge that we take on board. But there are many honourable ministers and members of our panel and those listening in. Even now, while we're conducting this training, I've had 2 other farmers organizations coming in requesting us to deliver a training that we completed last week to their organizations. It's something that we're trying to navigate through, but we're trying our best to support all these organizations. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much. If other participants have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box or in the Q&A.
I'll just like to add one more thing for the Honorable Minister. I just wanted to, as we speak, there is an AgriTouch app which has been launched by the Ministry of Agriculture. And we have just made it 0 rated or free to access by all the farmers in the country on the digital network. So, so that is something what we've just done. And from our side, the technical integration is right now ongoing. Hopefully by next week, it should be live and free to access by all. So, we understand, sometimes where as a part of our CSR initiative, to work closely with the ministry and also closely work, because this is an initiative again, with UNDP, with the ministry, and it gives access to all the projects, which are running. So today, sometimes being farmers, when you are, when you own a piece of land, you will know that there are so many, the benefits or so many programs which are being shared by the government for the benefits of the farmer, and especially across the country. So that's why we've kind of made that free to access. So no data charges over that. So hopefully that should also help.
Thank you. Thank you, Sioli. And I see there was a question which I think just got answered. So there's a question that is for Lemunga. And the question says, what are some of the specific strategies that you can suggest to address the knowledge gap you spoke about in regards to the green business initiatives?
Yeah, so yeah, I've answered that question. Like I mentioned, inclusiveness and consultations, but also holding us to account as well. We don't want to be just seen as raising issues, but we also want to be held accountable to support our different stakeholders and achieving those outcomes as well.
Thank you. I will just give it one more minute for if there's any other question. And while we're waiting, I would like to really thank you, but to all the speakers. This has been a wonderful discussion. I have personally learned so much. There is a lot more that's happening here in Samoa that we sometimes miss. And conversations like these really help us in understanding what's happening and connecting the dots and together creating a larger picture. And there is a hand up by our Honorable Minister. If you'd like to ask a question. Yes.
No, I think I just wanted to say, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to the panelists, and it's good to hear the work that you guys are doing, and I'm glad I had the time to listen in. I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's good to have the private sector being willingness to take on the challenge and a lot of the issues that are raised. I think we would like to take also a lot of the requests and the issues understandably. The access to technology, the access to information, the access to the appropriate markets, so we can transform our economy and the industry into greening our economy. This is something that we take it very seriously, and we will look at all the things that are raised. And I think it's also not just for Samoa, but going forward in terms of the long term, going at the global level, will make a stronger voice in terms of getting the global community to actually make the resources available so we can access it at a national level. Just a couple of things that I wanted to also flag with the panelists, but also in a wider sense in terms of to think about the issue of our carbon footprint. We have a lot of travelers. We have a lot of workers going away, and we have a lot of workers in the different private sector. We use cars. We all use petrol of some sort. We travel. Maybe it's also, when you're looking at your industries, it's looking at how can you utilize or you look at that carbon footprint in terms of replanting some of the trees to do that. That is work that won't cost the government, won't cost your project your industry anything, but it will increase our carbon, improve our carbon footprint, and later on you can get money if we can look at carbon credits for those trees that you're replanting. The other issue is paperless. I don't know if I missed the issue of discussion on paperless. As we go forward, I see the digital, and especially with our improving technology, how can we work into a paperless industry, both in the private sector? I think those are just the two that I just wanted to add into to also help with the discussion, and especially when we look at the greening. I know the main area is relating to renewable energy and also energy efficiency, but energy efficiencies can only be fully realized if we can get good incentives or subsidies that will make a lot of the products cheaper and accessible for people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your remarks. Thank you again, everyone, for speaking. And I would like to invite Ozzy to come in and thank on behalf of UNDP to all of you. Ozzy, please join us in. Ozzy, you're on mute, I think. Sorry. Still muted.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. My sincerest apologies to everyone. From Malofa Fitai, it has been a pleasure to listen and observe that very constructive and engaging dialogue. Lava to our distinguished guest speakers, to Sungase Yuli Di Bakana, CEO of Digicel, Fiong Lemonga Hobart Baai, CEO of Samoa Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and last but not least, Fiong Ayatupaisa Salimo Baai, the chairman of the Samoa Hotel and Hospitality Association. Thank you for those insights and the reflections into what the private sector is about and contribution to the theme of this consultation, and as well as your aspirations for a healthy planet, for prosperity of all, and what we can do beyond the Stockholm+50. The Minister for MNRE, Fatai Lava Fionga, for joining us this morning. It is a privilege and pleasure to have you in this dialogue. You have encompassed all aspects of this dialogue, so I will not duplicate or extend any further. Fatai Lava Fionga for joining us. I would just like to finally say the whole dialogue today is being recorded and will be made available on our Spark Group page for all our colleagues, our private sector partners, members who would want to view this again. Will be available on the Spark Group page as that's been put on, the link has been put on by our colleagues in our chat group. Last but not least, to our moderator, Ms. Pragya Mishra. Thank you for that excellent and well-moderated session. I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. God bless.
Thank you, Ozzy. Thank you very much. Once again, everybody, thank you very much. Thank you, Nola and Maria, for helping us with the sign language translation. I'm also grateful for all the participants who have joined us today. This is just a beginning, and we have many more compelling discussions lined up for this and next week. If today's discussion inspired you, you too would like to share your opinions about the state of world's progress towards a sustainable planet, you can do so by registering on the Spark Group page. You can answer as many questions as you would like to under the 3 leadership dialogues. You can also access the recording of this webinar on the Spark Group page, as Ozzy has already mentioned. The link to Spark Group page is in the chat. Thank you once again for joining us. Do reach out to, do tune into UNDP social media to get more details about the upcoming webinars. Fafatai Telilava, wish you a wonderful day. Thank you again. Thank you.